Dr. Mindy Pelz, and I actually get to share with you today one of my favorite topics, which is balancing hormones, but specifically how to balance hormones in the rushing woman. And I just want to start off by thanking Systemic for having me. You guys will see as I go through this presentation, I love their products. They have been life-changing and life-saving in my practice. And nowhere have they helped me more than dealing with the patient who has hormonal imbalances. And I want to start off by, this topic is actually a very personal topic to me. So because I'm 49 years old, I am a menopausal woman who has been going through many of the things that I will talk to you today about. So I not only am sharing this with you from a practitioner standpoint, but I'm also sharing it from a patient standpoint. So one of the things that I think is important is that we understand what today's woman is under. So when you look like here, on the today's woman, when I look at what women in general are going through today, it is the amount of stress that we are under. Is our bodies were not made to handle that amount of stress. So here on this first slide, you'll see this is actually a picture of me and my family on my 43rd birthday. So I'm 49 right now, and when I hit 40, I really had the idea that health was working out all the time. It was eating the right foods. It was getting chiropractic care and maybe taking a few supplements. And that was kind of my perception of health. And on my 43rd birthday, everything changed for me hormonally. I started getting night sweats at night, all the time at night, waking me up. I was getting anxiety and depression. I had never experienced depression before. And if you are one of those people who've had chronic depression, my heart really goes out to you, because depression for no particular reason is really is a struggle to move through your day. I was angry. I was not showing up as the parent I wanted to be. But I didn't really have anything in my life that I could say was causing this level of hormonal balance. So I actually went to a friend of mine who is an OB at one of the top hospitals here. And our kids were in school together, and we were sitting at a science fair looking at the science projects. And I went over to her and I said, hey, Heidi, I'm experiencing this, and this, but I'm only 43. Like, is that perimenopause? Is that menopause? Like, what is that? And she looked up from looking at her child's science project. She looked right at me and said, Mindy, my God, I have a practice full of women experiencing what you just said. And I don't know what to do with them. She goes, it's like an epidemic. And she actually used this word. She said, my medical textbooks have failed me. I do not know what to do with these symptoms other than put people on hormone replacement or put them on an antidepressant or a sleep medication. And luckily, she had enough insight to say, I know that's not going to be the solution, but that's the only tool set I have. So, of course, that made me dive deeper in to understanding this. And my feeling was at the time, and it still is my feeling today, is if it's happening to so many women, then there must be something in the environment that's causing so many hormonal problems. So when you look here on this next slide, you'll see that there is a concept. I did not come up with this concept. I'll show you the woman who did, called rushing woman syndrome. And on the next slide here, you'll see that the rushing woman syndrome is, and a lot of you I know are going to resonate with this, and a lot of you I know have patients that have this. But here is the rushing woman syndrome, or the rushing woman. The rushing woman can't give up coffee. The rushing woman walks around saying, I'm so busy, I'm stressed. The rushing woman is a hot mess when her menstrual cycle comes around. The rushing woman is craving sugar and alcohol. The rushing woman lives in anxiety so often and feels panicked for no particular reason. The rushing woman will tell me that her heart is racing and she doesn't know why. They are always in a state of go. They always are walking around. I have so much to do. I have so much to do. I don't have enough hours in the day. I'm not sleeping. The Russian woman is always on her phone, like checking her phone all the time. And yes, the Russian woman checks her phone at a stoplight, checks her email at a stoplight. And the Russian woman never makes time for herself, and she is laughing less and overreacting very easily. How many of your patients do you feel are rushing women? And before I go into how I've gone about helping these women, I wanted to give you a context of what you're dealing with, because throwing a rushing woman one supplement is not going to be the answer. In fact, the rushing woman needs to be brought to her consciousness. When I first learned about this concept called the rushing woman, I started to talk to my patients about it. I have a YouTube channel where I do a lot of videos. I have a Facebook group where I'm coaching people, and all I did is come to one video and say, "Oh my gosh, I think I'm a rushing woman." And women came out of the woodwork. Like, people were like, "Yes, I'm a rushing woman." My patients came to me and were like, "Yes, I'm a rushing woman. That's me." All you have to do is say this phrase and women get it. So when you look on the next slide here, this is actually Libby Weaver. I cannot take credit for the term. She's the brilliant mind that did. She has written a book called Rushing Woman Syndrome. I can't recommend enough that you go out and get it. It actually is, it explains the hormonal cascade that happens when cortisol goes up. I'm going to explain it from a standpoint of how you use the systemic formulas to help with the rushing woman, but you'll love the book. So go look at the book. And she has a TED Talk. So go look at her TED Talk. And one of the major principles that Dr. Weaver teaches us is here on this next slide. You can see that her major premise is that we were not designed, the woman's body was not designed to live in today's world. We were designed to live in a world of like the cave people did. Believe me, I am a strong, powerful woman that believes she can achieve anything. I am a working mom. I am that woman that feels I can be a mother and I can have a career and I can do it all. And so when I tell you that we're not designed to do it all, our bodies were not physically designed to do it all, this is a concept I really had to get in my head, because until I studied Dr. Weaver's information, I felt like, well, of course I can do it all. But then once I looked at what she was saying about how the woman's body was made, I realized just because I can do it all doesn't mean I should do it all. And that my hormones might be suffering because I am pushing myself because I know I can do it, but that my body is saying I shouldn't do it. So if you look here on this next slide, this is the rushing woman. This woman on the left with the looking at her watch and rushing with the babies. Oh my gosh, my kids are teenagers now, but that was me. If I can do one thing good, I can probably do 5 even better. The rushing woman has a tremendous amount of stimulation and responsibilities at work as well. And when you look on the next slide, you'll see that the rushing woman, to keep up with her rush life, is not able to eat the right foods. She's not researching what her makeup is doing to her endocrine balance. She's reaching for medication quickly. She's on the cell phone getting Wi-Fi stimulation all the time. And on the next slide here, you can see that it is putting her in sympathetic dominance. She is stuck in this place of fight or flight. And what I want to tell you from the bottom of my heart, and really I want you to grasp this, is that your patient doesn't know how to get out of this. It took people pointing it out to me that it was time to slow down, that it was time to not rush. And it took close friends telling me multiple times before I got it. And what a lot of the people of these rushing women do on the next slide here, you can see that this is their solution. Their solution is coffee to wake them up, Prozac to help them feel better, Ambien to make them sleep, and wine to wind them down. That is what the Russian woman is doing, and it is destroying her hormones. So when we look on the next slide here, this is why so many women are losing their hair. They can't lose weight. They're stressed all the time. They're overwhelmed. They're having thyroid problems. And the one that is killing me the most is just the amount of cancers: breast cancer, ovarian cancer. So many of these situations are coming from a rushed life. So as I move to the next slide here, what I want you to be aware of is that women are not aware of this, and that you have a pivotal opportunity to make them aware of it. And again, I speak that from a place as a doctor, but also as a patient who was not aware of it. And that what we can do to educate and what we can do to use some of the systemic tools, it will change these women's lives and will be life-saving for many of them. Many of these women, when I go through the next several slides, you're going to see that many of these women would have built breast cancer if they hadn't come into you to deal with their thyroid problem. So the impact that we have on just bringing to their awareness the rushing piece of this is huge. So today, over the next several slides, I really want to give you goals of what is going on with this rushing woman. So when we dive into what the hormonal consequence of this is, so here I put on this side here everything that's happening hormonally to the rushing woman when cortisol goes up. Now, remember, cortisol is a root cause issue. So cortisol is the problem. When cortisol goes up, what we know is that progesterone will go down. So it's called pregnenolone stealing. If you haven't heard of it, that the precursor pregnenolone, the precursor to make cortisol, and the precursor to make progesterone is pregnenolone. So if cortisol goes up, then your body will steal the pregnenolone production to make more cortisol, because the rushing woman is under so much stress that the body thinks there's a massive crisis and it needs to deal with that more than giving the woman progesterone to make a baby and to shed the uterine lining. So most of your patients are going to start off with this progesterone being low. Now, progesterone and estrogen work in balance with each other. So when progesterone goes low, it has a tendency to make estrogen go high. The analogy that I like is that estrogen is like fertilizer to a lawn, and progesterone is what mows that lawn. If estrogen is allowed to get out of control, what will end up happening is that those women are more prone to, on a immediate level, weight gain, hot flashes. A lot of your patients with hot flashes have too much estrogen. But on a long-term level, if we don't help this rushing woman balance cortisol and get her estrogen and progesterone balance back in order, she's on a fast path to breast cancer. So that's the impact we have in helping her see what rushing is doing. But when cortisol goes up, it's also bringing those thyroid hormones down. It's bringing testosterone down. Testosterone, by the way, I know most of you know this, but I tell my patients that testosterone controls one of two things. It's your libido, and it's also your motivation and muscle strength. So I'll show you a test later on in this webinar that I used on myself to really see the hormonal consequence of my rush life. And one of my hormones that was really low was testosterone. And the funny thing was, at the time, I felt like I just was dragging myself out to go work out. And I had no muscle strength. Every time I went to go, for a run, which is what I love to do, I had no oomph in me. Well, when I got my test back, sure enough, my testosterone was incredibly low. And I'll show you, there's some magical supplements. My favorite supplement of 2018 is a supplement that raises testosterone. So I'll show you what that is. So testosterone will go down. Now, remember, when cortisol goes up, glucose goes up, insulin goes up, cholesterol goes up, and the bacteria in your gut can be destroyed. So why I want to show you the context to look at it is this isn't just about throwing supplements at the rushing woman. This is about using those supplements in a very smart way, but then also helping her with the rushed life. If you haven't seen the webinar I did on calming the brain, go look at that, because that is a wonderful way that we can help the rushing woman calm her brain. But let's dive into each one of these hormones so that you can understand what you can impact with systemic products, and then what you can impact with some diet changes. So on the next slide, one of the things that I educate my patients on a lot, and I'm going to encourage you to do the same, is that their hormonal imbalance is because of this sympathetic dominance. It is because their toxic bucket is overflowing, and their liver that breaks down harmful estrogen is in massive working overtime. And that there is a piece of their hormonal imbalance that is tied into the microbiome. So there is a whole set of bacteria that help us with estrogen balance. And in this antibiotic-rich world that we're living in, that bacteria is being destroyed. So I want them to see the root cause before I go and hand them the supplement and deal with the individual hormone. I think this is such an important message, because the supplements are powerful, and yet we want the patient to see that there's a bigger picture here, because that's how we're going to save their life. So on the next slide, I like to create a toolbox for my patients. So we call it a multi-therapeutic approach. Those of you that know Dr. Pompa, he's the one that taught me that. I can't take credit for it. He is a brilliant mind who I have been blessed to study under for the past several years. And one of the things I like about the multi-therapeutic approach is that we can create a toolbox for our patients that includes supplements. It includes diet. It can include, if you're an acupuncturist, it can include the tools that you're doing with acupuncture. It can include chiropractic. It can include all the tools that you are already using, but you can add different pieces in to show the patient that this isn't a one pill, one problem issue. This is a lifestyle issue that has a root cause problem, and you need a multi-therapeutic approach. You need a toolbox to handling it. So when I look at the toolbox slide, that's what I'm showing you. So let's start with the first tool that you really need. And now what I'll tell you, as I move through the hormones, I'm going to move through them pretty fast here. And take notes, and then at the end, I'll show you how I tie it together for a patient. So, because again, one of the issues that we have at Systemic is we have too many great options. There's too many, but it's also incredible that we have so many options. So, okay, first thing for lowering cortisol. I really encourage you to go watch my webinar on calming the brain. There's some great strategies in there. Second thing, make them aware of rushing woman syndrome. Send them Dr. Weaver's TED Talk, get them the book. Most women, like I said, need to be snapped out of this. The third thing, yes, you have to work on their adrenals. So when I go to work on a patient's adrenals, I don't just throw GA at them. I look at the whole HPA axis. So we will detox metals out of the pituitary, or in some cases, if we're wanting just a quick, like, let's power up this HPA axis, I'll do GB, which is the biofunction designed to get nutrition and herbs to the pituitary. I'll do GA, which is what we're using for adrenals. And then I'll use a biocommand number 2, which is builder, to build up these 2 organs. So make them aware. And then this would be like the first entry level supplements I would get them on. Then on the next slide, you'll see that the next hormone I go after is progesterone. I find that most rushing women have low progesterone. So remember, there's this balance of estrogen to progesterone. So I let them know, signs of low progesterone are anxiety, not sleeping well, hot flashes, because when progesterone goes down, estrogen goes up, and that can create hot flashes, inability to cope. It's really, progesterone is our anti-anxiety hormone. The other way that women know they're low in progesterone is they may spot right before their period. And then there might be like a couple of days before they actually start their menstrual cycle. So spotting would be a sign of it. Women who aren't getting a period, many of them have very low progesterone. So what tools do we have for building progesterone? And again, reducing stress is a major tool. But check this out. When we look at the supplements, again, like that Systemic made, it's incredible. Vista 1 and 2 was made for the outer cell membrane, but it was also made for receptor site sensitivity, receptors for hormones like estrogen and progesterone. So make sure you're incorporating Vista 1 and 2. Femacrine. Okay. I have lots of stories about Femacrine. Femacrine not only has DIM in it, which will help with raised progesterone, but it has a probiotic in it that is necessary for breaking down harmful estrogens. It is, next to, I'm going to put it in my top 3 favorite supplements that Systemic has. And the joke that many of us have that are using Femacrine and are in our perimenopause years is that friends don't let friends go off Femacrine. I have a good friend who uses these supplements and is a health and life coach. And one day I was complaining about something. I was really edgy. And she said to me, "Did you go off Femacrine again?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sorry. I haven't been taking it. I ran out. I just forgot to take it." And she's like, "Look, I'm your friend, and friends don't let their friends go off Femacrine. Femacrine rocks. It is the gift to all perimenopausal women." So I'm pretty sure Dr. Shane and Dr. Pompa came up with that formula together, and I am forever grateful for Femacrine. So please lean on that for your perimenopause and menopausal women. Again, I go to the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the ovaries. I look at that feedback loop because that's what controls progesterone. So I will get women on GB, we'll get them on the adrenal supplement, GA, we'll get them on building everything up. These poor organs are really overly taxed, so we build them up. F plus has herbs in it that will balance estrogen and progesterone. FPMS is fabulous the week before their cycle comes if they know that their cycle is about to begin. And then the other piece, and you can go to my website, it's called, I have something called a ketobiotic reset for women, where I show women how to eat for their cycle. So the week before our cycle, we really need to eat foods that are rich in like beans and squashes, rice, potatoes, citrus fruit, tropical fruits. So these are not foods that typically women that follow a low carb diet or a ketogenic diet would eat. So I teach my patients to really up those foods the week before their cycle so that they can benefit, their body can benefit from the food source that comes with those foods and how it can start to raise progesterone. So, but if there's go after cortisol, go after progesterone. Those are your first two starting places. Okay, on the next slide here. Now, estrogen. So most of the time, estrogen is too high. So we live in a very estrogen dominant world. So I teach them about xenoestrogens and how they need to remove that xenoestrogens out of their life and get. I teach them tools like the Think Dirty app or the Safe Cosmetics. If you just type in Safe Cosmetics has an app. But you really want to change their beauty products. You want to look at things in their household, cleaners that might be making them more estrogen dominant. Pesticides, teach them how to eat organic. Pesticides can raise estrogen. So you want to give them those tools. The second thing is you got to look at the liver and you got to look at the gut. Those are two areas that break down harmful estrogens. So make sure you're either doing a detox with them, get them on some MBC, give them some enzymes, but those two organs play a massive part in helping lower estrogen. You also have to look at raising progesterone up so that progesterone, remember, when progesterone goes up, estrogen goes down. Now, another game-changing supplement, and one of the things that I didn't realize until I came to a live event at Systemic Formulas is that some of the male supplements are actually made to break down some of will help women in general, but are there to break down estrogen, or some of them the male supplements are there to raise testosterone that will benefit women. So just because it says male on it doesn't mean that it's only for men. I also know men who have told me that they were worried about having man boobs. And so they started using F+ and Femicrin to make sure that they didn't end up with too much estrogen in their body. Pretty cool. So MPC is meant to break down estrogen. Femicrin is meant to help with the estrogen progesterone balance. And Vista 1 and 2 is to help with the sensitivity of the receptor sites so estrogen can be used. And don't forget about the adrenals and the HPA axis, really important part in lowering estrogen, especially in your perimenopause and menopausal women and your rushing woman. The adrenals play a huge piece. So you may need to strengthen the adrenals before you go after balancing estrogen and progesterone. So on the next slide, you'll see that when we look at hormonal balance, it's not just estrogen and progesterone. We also have to look at the thyroid. And the thyroid is very complicated. I feel like I could do a whole webinar just on the thyroid alone, but let me give you the basics. The thyroid is the canary in the coal mine. So if your rushing woman has a problem with thyroid hormones, we need to look at what kind of toxicity has been amped up in this woman. So all of my rushing women go through the prep body and brain. We work on detoxifying her. We also get support to the pituitary, the liver, the way that the cascade of hormones works for the thyroid is that TSH is secreted in the pituitary. TSH goes to the thyroid, stimulates the thyroid. The thyroid will secrete mostly T4. It does a little bit of calcitonin and a little bit of T3, but it does mostly T4. Then it goes from the thyroid T4 into the liver and the gut, where it gets converted into T3, and then it goes into the cell. So I put on this slide so you guys could see that with your thyroid patients, it may not just be an issue of a thyroid problem. You might want to go look at the pituitary, the liver, the gut, and look at the cell, because it's a team approach with the thyroid. So some of the supplements that we have used that work really well with our thyroid patients is GB, everything I just showed you. GF, I actually lean on GF more than I lean on TMI, iodine. I'm very careful how I give iodine supplements, because if you give too much iodine, it can really cause a damage to the patient. So with TMI, I use very cautiously. But GF is fabulous for the thyroid, for somebody with thyroid problem. And then you got to look at the liver. That we have 3 supplements: L-liver, LS, and LB. I cycle those. I wouldn't necessarily give them all at the same time. I would cycle through them. We've got MBC, the world's best probiotic, to help with the gut. And then we've got, for the cellular health, the core cellulars. So we've got Vista 1 and 2, we've got E-Energy, we've got Morse. So make sure you're cycling those in, and then please be teaching them about a clean diet. So as you can see, the thyroid's really complicated, but I needed to put it in there because it's a piece of the rushing woman's profile that needs to be addressed. Okay, on the next slide, this is testosterone, and there's some cool supplements you can use. Here is my favorite supplement of 2018 is M+. I took that when I saw that my testosterone was low, and within a couple of days, it dramatically changed my workouts. So my muscle fatigue went away. I really started to feel a passion for working out again, which was awesome. Be sure you look at the adrenals. Aventa is really good for breaking the no-ono cycle, which is that toxic cycle that the rushing woman has, that is just putting all of her hormones out of balance. So Aventa is what I use for low testosterone. And then there's a correlation between zinc and low zinc, or low testosterone and low zinc. So ZNC is really great for raising testosterone as well. So and intermittent fasting, there's great studies on the power of intermittent fasting for raising testosterone. So that's my toolbox for testosterone. Now, if you go to the next slide, glucose and insulin, the strategies we use in my office are fasting and keto. Hopefully you all know about that. If you don't, go check out my YouTube channel. I've done hundreds of videos on it. You can go learn about it there. And thank goodness for systemic, because we have MetaboShake and we have Sinulin to help with the glucose insulin balance. So if I feel like somebody's glucose is really off, then what I will do is I will intermittent fast them, and then the first meal I'll have them do is MetaboShake. In my patients that are either diabetic or pre-diabetic and hormonal, I use Sinulin a lot, and they're both really effective. So, and on the next slide, a lot of people ask me, well, and I know a lot of you guys do muscle testing, which is awesome. I like the more concrete tests. So a lot of people have asked me what test do I use, and the Dutch test is it. It's easy to use. It gives me a really clear idea of all the hormones that I just explained to you. So if you're not familiar with that, go research Dutch test and use the Dutch test. So that's how I address it. And on the next slide, how the heck do we put this all together? So let me show you how I would do it. And I'm going to show you primarily for somebody who's low in progesterone. So again, remember, I use a multi-therapeutic approach. And there are basically 3 steps that I look at. 1, what's the root cause? If rushing is the root cause, I'm going to love that woman up, and I'm going to keep reminding her strategies for non-rushing. I'll tell you, as a rushing woman, it took a friend of mine telling me multiple times. It took me looking at my Dutch test to go, whoa, I need to change this. So it may be multiple conversations you need to have. The second thing is you want to counsel them on lifestyle changes. So give them tools and help them see where they can. I think with a rushed woman, when you tell them to stop stressing, that just makes them stress more. You need to give them tools, like show them, if you want them to meditate, show them what that looks like. Is that I have people sometimes use an app, like a Calm app that they would use. So you gotta let them know what that looks like, not just, hey, you might want to lower your stress. And then you want to target the hormone or the organ that you want to address. And how I would do that for the next slide here, I'll show you. This is how I would do it for low progesterone. I would look at the root cause of rushing woman. I would look at any internal stress they might be having, like too many estrogen mimickers or too many heavy metals. I would look at that piece. I would then clean up their diet. I would teach them how to fast. They might be, if they have a lot of adrenal fatigue, you just take their breakfast and push it back an hour. Just start off with light fasting. And then I would teach them exercise variation. So a lot of rushing women are exercising too much, and they need to know how to not exercise as much. They need to do some yoga, or they need to go for a walk. The rushing woman likes to often do everything to the extreme. So you might have to tell that rushing woman to calm her little body down and to implement some yoga. I have done that. I work with a lot of like CEOs and COOs and VPs here in Silicon Valley. And I will sit down with them and be like, okay, we're going to get you off the treadmill. You got to get off the treadmill on high speed, and you got to get into the yoga class. So you want to educate them like that. And then a really awesome protocol for progesterone that saved my life is Femicrin. I do 4 a day, 2 in the morning, 2 at night. FPMS, I do the week before my cycle. Same thing, 2 in the morning, 2 at night. And F plus, I'm on all the time, 4 a day. Again, when symptoms are really bad, I'm on F plus or all of these 4 a day. And F plus, you take the whole month. Femicrin, they take the whole month. FPMS, they're just taking the week before their period. And the Vista 1 to 2, I would do 2 a day. And this is for the cell receptor site sensitivity. So this would be a multi-therapeutic approach to low progesterone. So, and it's one I used on myself. So really, I can't emphasize enough how life-saving this was for me. And if you come to any of the seminars, come talk to me. Again, this is a topic I'm really passionate about, and I've lived for myself, so I can share with you what I've done, what's worked, what hasn't worked. So, and let me finish up with this on this next slide. I have resources if we're trying to help these rushing women. So I have a podcast that I do with a couple other women called Women in Wellness. Go, please watch the podcast. Or listen to it, share it. We actually have the way that it's designed, it's actually really beneficial to the holistic practitioner. So we do topics and we talk about systemic formulas. That's primarily the only supplements we use. So we're always promoting that. So please share those with your patients. And if there's a topic you want us to talk about, let me know and we'll make sure we talk about it so you can share it with your patients. And my last thoughts. I've sat at the bedside of 3 rushing women who had breast cancer and died of it. And every single one of these women said to me, if I had known better, I would have done better. And yet they didn't know their toxic life and they didn't know their rushing life was building disease. So when Systemic Formulas asked me to do a presentation and what did I want to talk about, I really wanted to talk about rushing woman syndrome because as practitioners, we can have a global impact on these women. We can lovingly remind them that the female body wasn't meant to rush, that you can still have an amazing life, you can still accomplish a lot of things, but that you need to calm the rushing down, and then you need to lean on some of these other resources that I talked about. And if we all stand up in our offices, in our communities, and we teach women this, and we do it with love, and we do it with tools that will help them, we'll change the world. We'll stop breast cancer. We literally will stop breast cancer. And we have the power to do that in our communities. So again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Systemic. Thank you for listening. I hope you got a ton of information out of this. Come find me at a seminar. I'm here to support you, and go save the world. Have an awesome day.